Okay, I'm going to call the Committee of Whole Council meeting of Tuesday, September 2nd to order and to welcome everyone and to begin with the acknowledgement of treaties of peace and friendship. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you, Walalan. Next is the oath of office. We do hereby accept the office of council and will faithfully and impartially discharge to the best of our ability the duties of the office as may be imposed upon us by law. Thank you. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions? I'd like to add one if council would allow, and that is I'd like to speak about policing in general, but also to the vandalism that took place this weekend in Jacket River. I'd like to speak to it a little bit and get some council input if they should wish. If everything's okay with that, then could we have a motion to adopt?
M 2025-0902-88 that the agenda be adopted with the changes.
Can I get a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Any statements of conflict of interest can be registered with the clerk. No presentations, petitions, or delegations that I see. Any business? If not, we'll move to council presentations. So I'll start. I've got a number of updates there. It's a little bit, some we'll be able to get because CEO Lee is not with us here tonight. But the first one is the council portfolio update. So last month, I mentioned how I would like to see council at least contemplate taking on portfolios and projects because of my belief that it helps move files forward, and I think it also helps the citizens of the community know that that the council members are working on different issues on their behalf. So I know last month we had talked about perhaps getting an update, but just to let you know that in October, my hope is to begin personally. I'm going to be giving a report each month, and that report each month could be during the committee of whole or the regular meeting. But I'll be giving a brief report on meetings that I've attended, community events that I've attended, updates on some portfolios that may have been working on through that month. And I expect to do it each month. And I would like to see council do the same. I know we have a report tonight from Deputy Mayor, and I think we have more council members working on specific portfolios, and I would like to see council follow that up and also do a report. And I'm hoping that once council members feel comfortable doing a report, that then they'll be able to perhaps take on specific portfolios, because I think that's the way it's done in most municipalities, so they must see something of value in it. And I think that's the way things get done, because it's very tough to have just put things on administration and say, get this done. I think that's one of the reasons we've struggled, is because we've done that. I think the deputy mayor made a good point last time when we first visited this. Most council members were new, and so that was fine, but that's not the case now. We're 4 years in, and I think this would be a good springboard for the following council to follow this example and to do it. And it's not new. It's done in a lot of other municipalities with some success, and I'd like us to follow it. So that's my plan for October, and I hope other council members follow. So if anyone has anything they'd like to add to that.
Just a couple of questions concerning that, Your Worship. In January of 2022, I wrote reports that were going into the Messenger. And one of the reports in May of 2022, I wrote January, February, March, April, and May. The report of May of 2022, when council read it, they didn't like what it said, so they made a motion stopping me from making those reports. So I haven't basically done a report since then, because at the end of the day, if your reports are going to be censored, what's the sense of doing them? If council doesn't like what's in it, they need to look in the mirror, not make a motion to ban what's there. So at the end of the day, that's my question. Are these reports going to be, like, if I made a report for the next public meeting in 2 weeks' time over the things that I've done and been involved with and moving forward, if that report being sent to council prior to the meeting, or is the report going to just be presented at the meeting? Because if we have to send it, well, in all honesty, I believe it should be sent in prior to the meeting, and council should have the right to read the report prior to the meeting. I don't have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, it's your own report. It's what you're doing. And because one councillor or two councillors or council as a whole doesn't like what's in it, does not make it any less. So my question is, are we going to submit these reports prior to the meeting so that council has them in their package prior to the meeting? Because we get our package every Friday prior to either the committee of the whole meeting on Monday or the public meeting on the Monday of 2 weeks later. So are we going to submit the reports prior to so that council has it, or are we going to just read it at the meeting? I just like one way or the other.
It's a good question. I think personally, I would pass them in. I mean, most of the reports I would assume pretty generic, and I think we've been on council long enough to sort of identify information that perhaps is not for the public domain at that moment, and others that is. So I would probably feel, that in my reports, I don't expect to have anything that's in that report that would need to be censored, but I would probably send it in first for council to take a look at, just in case there was something there that perhaps COLE or the council members didn't feel comfortable with. But there's a difference between feeling comfortable with something and something that shouldn't be on there for reasons, legal reasons or otherwise. So I would probably say it's probably good practice to have it sent in, but I agree with you in a sense that it's not to be sent in to be chopped down and watered down by council because they don't necessarily like the message. I would just say that I can't see anything in the reports that I would be putting forward that would offend any council member. It's just basically an update of where I've been and what I've done.
In the past, at the Committee of Whole, we used to do that. We used to, tell the people and the citizens where we went, what meetings we attended to, whatever, because we're all on boards, we're all working on certain projects and so on. So, but I guess we just lost it somewhere, is that we stopped putting in the reports, because I know in the past I used to go monthly, and this is where I went this month, here, and I don't know if that's what you want or what kind, and I would put a small report with it, what type of meeting. But if we all go to the same meeting, or should we all mark them, bring them all up, and it could be a long.
Yeah, no,
meeting.
and that's another point I was thinking, that's a good question about overlap, right? I don't think you need to have a bunch of, overlap. If a previous council member has mentioned it in their report, then you're fine with it, then there's really no need for you to mention it, but you can add something should you wish, right? I mean, it's a work in progress, and, I don't think there's any need for like 10 or 15-minute reports unless someone has an actual, something that they feel very seriously needs to be discussed. But again, for me, it's just to have our citizens know that in the last 30 days, this is what I've been doing, this is what I've been participating in, and this is, and it adds a communication with the citizens. Councilor Burke, did you have another question?
No, I'm perfectly content with the guidance, I guess. At the end of the day, I don't have a problem at all submitting reports, and I don't have a problem sending them prior to the meeting. Where I'm going with that is Councillor Carmichael is absolutely correct in the sense of saying that we did get away from that, and it's something we should have evaluated sooner than later. But with that said, it's better to say, start somewhere, and this is a good start.
Anyone else? Okay, so the next one was the village income tax program update. And the last meeting that I spoke to this issue about, I mentioned how I would like to try and somehow find a reconciliation between having the program exist because it helps a certain segment of our population with underwriting the cost of what is a mandatory document for them to send in. But I also wanted to square it with the fact, and it is a fact, that we have some businesses who are losing clientele because of it. That's, if they're being diverted here when they would generally go to business A or business B, then that's losing clientele, no matter how you try and square it. So it's not about getting rid of the program as much as it is reconciling what is a flaw in the program. It has to be that way because I've had two businesses, at least two, who have mentioned to me that they're losing clientele. So this is not me, working the math. It's having been told that they're losing clientele, which we don't want. We want our businesses to be able to have access to not a large clientele body, by the way, right? We're not in Montreal, and I think that's probably going to be, or Toronto, and that's probably going to be mentioned later as well. It's a small clientele. So if you're losing it, then you're losing a proportionate amount of business, and that's not right. We don't do it in other services. We don't, not that I know of, unless someone can point to me another business model like this that we're involved in. The concept is good. We're allowing people who, need to have this service underwritten the opportunity to do so. But we shouldn't be hurting local businesses. So I think we need to, and this is an issue that I'm not letting up on, because I think it sets a bad precedent, and I really don't see where we can't come up with some solution. There needs to be a solution here. The math works. The status quo in this program doesn't work, as far as I'm concerned. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got lots. This is a volunteer program where nothing is diverted through the Village of Baldoon. We get subsidized for office supplies, ink and paper through the federal government. Heather Fournette donates her time. Brenda donates her time. Brittany and Nicole donate their time. They do this after hours and on their own time. It's a volunteer program to help low-income seniors and low-income residents in our village and in neighboring villages get their income tax filed. Otherwise, most of them don't bother, I don't think. So they're missing out on other annual subsidies, GST forms, that sort of thing, because they're not filing their taxes. That's why the program exists. That's why the federal government designed the program, and it works very, very well in other communities. So, and to say that we don't do another business, I'll give you an example. Since this is all volunteer program, we subsidize the Legion to do suppers. Are we taking away from the local restaurants because the Legion is doing a supper? They're all volunteers. It's the same type of thing. So it's a volunteer program that has served the community for well over 10 years, and I think it should continue to do so.
I agree with Cynthia. I don't think we're really taking a whole lot. We would be losing these people and they wouldn't be doing their income tax. We're doing a good deed, and the people that are helping we appreciate these people for helping, giving their time and doing it. The numbers are not that big. Yes, it's a small community, but I think that these people are pretty busy anyway. The two businesses that you mentioned, I wouldn't feel very well not to close that program and not offer it to our citizen, because the people are used to coming here, and we're talking senior citizens, a lot of people that are older, that it makes it easy. They come here, they drop it off, it's easy for them. If you complicated it, why complicate it for them?
Okay, before I move on though, I want to make this clear. I'm not talking about closing the program. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about reconciling the fact that we have a program that business owners are coming to me and saying, you're taking part of my clientele. So it's not about closing the program. That's incorrect.
Yeah, just, if I may, Your Worship, just a general comment. I just read an email from our CAO that said that there's 167 tax forms that are done on that program in Beldoon. Well, that's what the email said. So with that said, I'm just going by the email I received. And, if I were to say there are, I'm going to say 1,000 people filing income taxes in Beldoon, got a population of what, 1,275, 1,300. So, pardon me? That's exactly my point. So if we were to say we got 1,000 people filing taxes and 167 are being done in a program, we're talking 16%. So 16%, there's no business in Beldoon that would ever survive losing 16% of its business. So my point is, and I agree 1,000% with the mayor's comment, it's not about closing the program. I don't think anybody wants to close the program, and that includes me. We need to find a compromise that will be some kind of a subsidy program or something that will compensate these businesses for the business they're losing. At the end of the day, I don't know what the solution is, but I'm going to say it this way. I filed my income tax. Cost me about $150 to file my income taxes. I'm a working guy locally. Yeah. So, with that said, it comes down to that, what does it cost somebody who has I guess a smaller income than I do, and they fall in that bracket. So the question becomes, what does one of these services, whether it be the other two or three, because I am going to agree with the mayor in the sense that I have had conversations with two businesses that have said to me they are losing business because of that program, but there's not a whole lot I can do about it, that type of thing, at least at this stage. But at this stage right now, we're talking about it, so I'm going to say I have had those conversations also. But the other side of the coin is what does a business in Beldoun who falls into that tax bracket, what is their charge for doing their taxes? Because I'm sure it's got a lot to do with the work or how much time they have to spend on the tax form or whatever. So somebody who has a basic tax to fill out has to be pretty straightforward. And with that said, I mean, it's straightforward for someone who has a little bit of experience at doing taxes. It's not straightforward if you have no experience at doing it. That's why you're bringing it somewhere else. But with that said, you know, maybe we need to look at what does this cost? How much money are we talking, and have an idea. You know, I mentioned the figure 167 based on that email, but okay, well, you may be right. We will confirm that.
And that's not just Beldoon. That's Beldoon, Lorne, Nash Creek, Tirisha. They're from the neighboring communities as well. So it's not based on just Beldoon.
So it's not only residents of Beldoon that are taking advantage of the program. Okay, so at the end of the day, maybe that's what we need to do. Residents of Beldoon might be subsidized or something like that. So anyway, it's food for thought, and I'm just putting my 2 cents worth in. And at the end of the day, I as the mayor stated, I want to make it very clear. I'm not in favor of abolishing the program. I'm in favor of finding alternative means so that we're not impacting local businesses.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, because are you saying we're going to have people like Heather volunteer to do somebody's taxes, but we're going to pay these other two businesses because they lost a potential client? And where is the, proof is not the right word, but where is the notion coming from that they're losing business? Like, where they didn't have these clients before, and they're not going to have them after. So where are these people going to get their taxes done? Because they're not paying for it. Plain and simple, they're not.
That was my scenario as well. This program has been in place for 10 years, over 10 years. And these clients that we service have been coming here for 10 years, so I can't see how it's impacted. Unfortunately, you know, maybe we need to have a criteria for the people using our service through the village, but seriously, I don't know how we can resolve this without affecting some of the clients that use our service.
See, the thing about that is, though, that it's not about, and I think it's more towards what Councillor Burke is saying. I think the solution is they can still come here. It's not about closing the program so that they can't come here. It's about reconciling having them come here, and we still get that business to the local businesses that do this business. So having them come here to, you know, to whatever, to bring their taxes or whatever work, that's a possibility. I mean, and I think that's the point, is that we still want them to be able to have this business or have this service. We want them to be able to take advantage of that service. The missing piece is, and I think maybe Councilor Burke might be onto something, maybe the first step is to actually see how much it might cost. And then once you get the cost, perhaps then you can take a look at taking the next step. But, you know, it's worth, I think, looking at, because I think the idea that having them, that they won't go to that service anyway is, to me, it's a red herring. If it's having them come here or wherever they want to bring it, they can still bring it. And you're still offering the service. The missing piece is not taking business away from a local business. That's the missing piece. That's what I would like to try and find a solution for.
May
If
I
it's-
speak?
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
So what you're saying, okay, let's say, per example, we get 100 applications in, okay? And we get our staff or whatever to do them, but we pay, are you thinking of paying these two businesses for that service that you felt that, like that, we're taking away from them? Like, is that what you're saying? Like, let's say there's 100, we're gonna pay $2,000 and give each business $1,000 because we did the taxes for them. So is that what you're thinking of in that area? Like
No,
20
I'm
like
not
a-
really thinking anything, because I don't think we put enough thought into it. We know what the X factor is. So we know we have a program that offers
a great service. We know that. So that's a fact. We know that we have some businesses who are losing clientele because if this service didn't exist, or if it existed and yet somehow they were getting paid for it or patronized in some way, then they wouldn't be losing. And they must know. Like, I'm sure the business people that have talked to us about this know. I don't think they're just making this up, and they must have a bottom line that they feel could be uptaked if they had this, if they had this clientele. So I'm going to go on and say, okay, that makes sense to me. So in terms of coming up with, solutions, and are you saying this or is this your opinion? What I'm saying is that I don't have one. What I'm saying is that we know we're missing something, and what I would like us to do is to have a greater focus on trying to find a solution if there is one. I mean, even Councillor Burke said he doesn't know. Do we have a solution to this or not? Maybe we don't. But it seems to me that there's a greater energy coming forth with saying, let's keep the status quo, as opposed to saying, perhaps there's a solution. And I would just like to balance that energy and say, let's put some more focus on trying to find a solution than just putting up a wall and saying the status quo is the way it is and it's what it works. And that's what I'm saying. So all of these things, all of these solutions are always baby steps that you take forward. And you have to deal with what you know. And this is what we know so far.
Well, Landon sent an email today suggesting that CRA come in and do a presentation on this program. They don't see how it could possibly impact any of the local businesses. So I would like to understand the program from CRA's perspective and go from there, because none of us know the program. So you're creating a problem that you have well, Heather knows the program. She could probably explain it if that would be allowed. But to talk about a problem and have no solutions and none of this makes sense.
Well, okay, then let's do that. Now, if we need more explanation on what the program is, then let's do that. Perhaps we can get maybe that's the first step. I mean, anybody throws their arms up here and just says, oh, that's not going to help finding a solution if there is one. If that's, hold on now, I'll give you a chance to speak. If having the CRA come in and do a better job explaining so that we all know, then let's start there.
If you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
I'm just going to give my opinion. I don't understand either, and I'm going to give just my own opinion. They have a service here that's been going on for 10 years. 10 years it's been working fine. So why has these two businesses, why is it only now that they're coming forward? And on the other side of it, as a person that gets their taxes done, they have a right. Each individual has a right to go wherever they choose to do their taxes. So if I have a right to do that, there could be a background there. Maybe it's confidentiality. Maybe it's a breach. There's a lot. I've had that. I've had that with organizations where it wasn't confidentiality. It wasn't. So why would I pay to go somewhere where I know that there's no confidentiality? I'm not going to go there anyway. So that's what I'm questioning.
Two things, and I'll do the second one first. Again, it's not about making them pay. Right. We don't want that. We want it to be the same kind of service that it is now. And the second thing is, it's in terms of the business coming forward. Actually, we had a council discussion on this at the last council in 2019, 2020. Councillor Divenborden at the time brought it forward, and I can go back and find the dates and give it to you all tomorrow, because I remember that discussion very well. And the discussion around the table was almost identical as to what it is now. That there was, and they felt the same thing, and I believe Councillor Divenborden at the time, if I'm not incorrect, and if I am, I'll apologize, I believe he also said that he had discussions. So it's not, this is not new to this council. This is an old issue.
But if you're not charging, if there's not going to be a charge, if there's still not going to be a charge, then how is it affecting their business? That's my question. If you're not being charged coming to the village, or I'm not being charged going to this person, then why is it that they think it's affecting their business?
Well, because that's clientele that would go to their business, Don. Okay, well, I think we've pretty much exhausted unless someone else has something to say. I think, but I think it's, again, it's a living issue, and we'll see where it goes, but that's a good discussion, and we'll pick it up. All right, the next one is the Appeals Committee update, and as far as the Appeals Committee update, normally I think we would ask COE to do that, but I guess we can, there was an email sent today sort of dealing with this, and just 2 points to it, just for the public domain and public consumption. Number one is, I think the citizens can feel good about the fact that we're making some inroads in terms of some of the issues that we have concerning dangerous and unsightly premises. I received a message today from a citizen who was quite pleased with the fact that there was some work done on one or more properties. And that was nice. That's the first one I received on this one. So I think the citizens can be pleased that we're making some inroads on this. I'd like to thank always the Appeals Committee, anyone who signs up for a committee that's helping the people of the village deserve some credit. And also, just to let people know, because this is a fact, there are times when we talk about dangerous and unsightly premises, and it's always done in a very general sense. But it has to be. We're dealing with, you're dealing with people's property, et cetera. So many times the updates are quite general and people would like more specifics, but and often is the case where we can't. But I can say that there has been a large improvement on this. I was on the last council and we struggled with this from beginning to end. And I would think that we're making inroads here that council tried to make, but ultimately could not. Anyone else? Okay. Summer student public works, the campground, salmon barrier. Thank you. We had a barbecue a couple weeks ago, and it was nice to see. It was nice to see all the people there. A lot of people from our public works. We had some people from our salmon barrier. And and our summer students, and I want to thank our summer students for the great work they did this summer. They did a terrific job. It was nice to be able to thank them with that barbecue. And to our people at the Jacket River Park, who also never get enough credit for what they do. So to all the people that work for us in our salmon barrier and our arena and our public works and our summer students, I just want to say thank you for what was, I think, a really, really productive summer. Pardon? Ended, of course. Well, it's almost like a given, right? And I did mention last week when we talked about, Angela's work on the annual report, stellar work, and Angela's phenomenal. Anyone else?
I appreciate the fact that we do acknowledge our summer students and our public works, as well as the campground and salmon barrier. These are employees that sometimes don't get recognized. So, job well done to all of them. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy that I want to thank them all also. They're doing all great work back there and everywhere, inside, outside. And thank you for all what they do for the community. It's not always easy, but they're doing great.
If I may, Your Worship, just a general comment here. In the past, councils were showing some respect for the employees who had long-term dedication to the village of Beldoon. 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year. Somewhere along the line that got lost in the shuffle. I know it was going on in the past, and that when employees celebrated a milestone, that they came right before council and were presented with a small token and recognized right at a public meeting for their dedication to the village and their service. Somewhere along the line that got out the door. And I believe that that's something we should look at, that when an employee hits a milestone, and I say milestone, 5, 10, 15, 20 years of service, I believe that deserves to be recognized, and it should be recognized even by the public. I mean, when we have employees that show that kind of dedication to the community and to their to the village of Beldoon, I believe they deserve some recognition publicly and should be recognized by council. So food for thought of something that maybe we could put together a program that, find some anniversary dates of our employees as when they started working with the village, and maybe take up the torch and maybe look at this for the future.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? No? Okay, DTI winter maintenance. So we're heading into the fall season, and I think it would be nice if we would take a proactive stance in trying to make sure that our winter maintenance, especially our communication with DTI, and our expectations from DTI are clearly articulated to DTI. I'm not so sure that's been the case in the past. I've asked, had to be a half dozen times, I have asked us to consider having a liaison committee type interaction with DTI. I think it would be worthwhile that we have a liaison committee, much as we had with MB Power. If you remember where MB Power was with this community before the liaison committee, everybody can tell you, and Councillor Burke can probably tell us this since he worked on the liaison committee, but the communication, which was not great with NB Power before this, before the liaison committee came on. There were, when there were issues with NB Power in any regard, there wasn't a point person that you could talk to and get things done quickly. When the liaison committee started and Bob Scott initiated that liaison committee, right away, we had a contact person that we could call. When there was an outage here in the village, Council Burke would call Bob Scott, and that was fixed in no time. And the communication to the village was fixed and was done in no time. We had issues with the generating station that council became aware of in real time. The liaison committee model works, and I'm not sure, I would like to bring, I would hope that in October, a council member will bring a motion forward to have a liaison committee with DTI. Because our communication with DTI, I think, although not bad, is not as good as it could be. And so when we have issues like large storms or power outages, or excuse me, maintenance that needs to be done, that DTI is in charge of, who do we contact? There isn't a name, I mean, other than the supervisor, and you're not gonna, I mean, we're not gonna call the supervisor every time there's an issue. There's gotta be somebody at a higher level that we can contact, and we should be doing that. So the DTI for winter maintenance, we've been lucky. We had 2 winters that were not very harsh. But we're due for one, and we don't have a communication set up with DTI. And we should. And that perfect model is the liaison committee model.
I think we need to start to meet with DTI, and find out this information and any questions we have. I know in the past we've tried to meet up with them and it hasn't happened, but I would like to meet up with DTI and have a talk to them. And I'm sure, there was talk in the past, a couple of months ago, about actually meeting up with them. So I think that's where we need to start. We need to start to meet with the management or supervisor or whatever. But I think that's where point A should be, is meet up with them.
If I may, Your Worship, there's no question the comments Councillor Carmichael has said, I agree with 100%. The problems we're having is that a blind person could tell the difference between driving from, let's say, just outside of the village of Beldoon limits into Beldoon and then exit Beldoon's limits on the other side, and know the difference in the snow removal and the condition of the highway or the roads for some reason. That is totally unacceptable. And I agree 100% with the mayor's comment that at the end of the day, a committee or a person, or it doesn't matter who, but obviously the people we're talking to aren't listening. This has been going on for years. They are not listening. I believe this relates back to the point the mayor brought up quite a while ago, is that we do not have enough contacts or enough conversations with the ministers. The ministers are all the key to having things moved. There is a big difference between dealing with a professional and dealing with, someone who treats us the way they treat us. This is totally unacceptable, the type of road conditions that we have during the winter months. It is not like that in other communities, and those people are the same people who do those communities who do ours. So why is our community in the shape it's in? It's because we've never pressed it. We have never made those people accountable, and they need to be accountable. And that's why we need a committee or a liaison person who's going to deal with this and take it right to where it needs to go to make the changes. So I agree 100%, Your Worship, and I wish somebody the best of luck.
Anyone else? I actually think that would be, we talked about portfolios. I think that would be a good one for somebody to actually work on. And I agree 100% that what we need to do is to start going right to the minister or deputy minister of this department. Because, as I also said many, many times, our village now has contacts in the government that we didn't have previously. And there is no reason, I'm almost certain that if we reached out to a minister or a deputy minister, we would get their blessing to start a liaison committee with one of their own who would make sure that in the chain of command that we're not being ignored anymore, or we're not being minimized. So I think that that's the way to go. And so I'm hoping that we can get a motion at some point to do this liaison committee and to get us started.
Just touch base on something. I know you're talking about other areas. My understanding is that they have private contractors doing their roads. They are not depending on DTI. So for whatever reason, DTI does not totally deal with these other communities the way we have to deal with them. So I don't know how we can maintain our roads with the same fashion they do, because we don't have the private contractors. But if we can get DTI to step it up, absolutely.
I guess I'm not really talking about other municipalities as much as I'm talking about government departments.
The roads in other municipalities, when you're saying like you can drive from one area and here you are in Beldoon and it's horrendous, you know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying, like other communities have private contractors.
I've had an issue last week with DTI. Archibald Road, the Doyville Road cutting across from Archibald to Doyville, the Beldoon line ends just after Real Doucette's house. So about 2 weeks ago, DTI was working on that side of the road, and I thought, great, because that road is in bad shape. So they just stopped at the Beldoon line, so I called DTI, and I actually had the supervisor come out just last week, and I was told that the village of Beldoon is responsible for the village of Beldoon. And they were told by their supervisor, or their higher up than the supervisor, which I know who it is, was told that they do to the Beldoon line, and Beldoon is responsible for Beldoon. So my question was, then why can you do half a road and leave the other half, which is the worst half, not done?
I'm not sure the scenario behind that area, but I mean, depending on what we are responsible for, I know that some of our public works are responsible for maintenance of some areas, but nothing extreme, and repairing a road. Like, I don't believe that that's logical, or I would be checking that for sure.
I already have. And the village of Beldoon, they have an agreement. And for as far as filling potholes, the village of Beldoon, according to DTI, the village of Beldoon is responsible for the village of Beldoon roads. Sorry, I've reached out to a higher up. I haven't got an answer yet, but I am waiting for a call back.
Just a comment on that, if I may, Your Worship. You know, the village of Beldoon is responsible for the roads that it has. Now, I believe we have about 148 kilometers of road, but they are mostly the side roads. Highway 134, you know, they've even pawned off, you know, when you talk to DTI or someone like that, they say, the asphalt belongs to DTI, the shoulder belongs to the village of Beldoon. You know, so, you know, with that said, you know, I mean, we're cutting hairs here, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, we do spend, I believe, $68,000 on a summer program, and we're paying $195,000 or whatever it is for snow removal in the wintertime, you know, And then they give us the excuse that they have A, B, and C roads, with Highway 11 being an A road, Highway 134 being a B road, and the side roads in Baldoon being C roads. So when they have a storm, they need to clear the A roads, and then they need to clear the B roads, and then they'll get to the C roads. But the other side of the coin to all that is that, all I got to do is take a drive through the village, and every guardrail has been hit by a snowplow, and they're trying to say that it's the village of Baldoon that needs to clear, fix those guardrails, and it comes down to that it's all the snowplows that are hitting the guardrails, and now they want us to repair the guardrail because it's in the shoulder of the road. Once again, that's where a liaison committee would come in very strongly, dealing with the minister, finding out what the facts are, because we never get the same answer, we never get a straight answer, and we always have these points coming our way. So I believe a liaison committee, starting right at the top, or whoever decides to take on that role, would be surprised at what they would discover.
And I think that's part of the reason that a committee would be beneficial, so that the information that council would know, we would all know. And the answers to our questions, might be answered at those meetings.
Just a last comment, if I may, Your Worship, we are extremely fortunate. We had Daniel Guitar as our MLA, and he decided to step down, and we had a replacement in Marco LeBlanc. I can tell you from personal experience, Marco LeBlanc is a true gentleman. He is a true advocate of Baldoon, and he has worked very hard in a lot of areas. So whoever is on that liaison committee, I would highly suggest that be the starting point, because Marco can direct you right to the Premier.
Yeah. Okay. So the last one on my list is policing in general, but the vandalism that took place at Jacket River Ball Field over the weekend. So in terms of policing in general, I think it's been a really good summer compared to, where we, prior summers. I think it's been relatively quiet. And I think the communication between the RCMP and the Northeast District and the council is a good one. I think almost everyone on council has had a one-on-one conversation with Sergeant Dulac, who is very personable and very knowledgeable, and who wants to make sure that Baldoon has the highest public security and public safety that it can have. So I think there's been some great inroads in that, and Sergeant Dulac actually shared some data with me. This is one that I think was shared with members of the Service Commission. And he said I was able to publish that data. So I'm going to, at some point soon, make a Facebook post and share that data, which proves statistically that the village of Baldoon is doing quite well in terms of policing and the number of cases that they are receiving. So that's a positive. But this weekend was a setback. If anyone saw some of the pictures on Facebook of the Jacket River baseball field and the field itself, the softball field, it was very disappointing to see the fence damaged and demolished in some places, and the field used for donuts, et cetera, et cetera. But my message is that I'm not gonna stand by and allow the progress that we've made with policing that we've made in the last few months, you know, just sort of diminish because some people don't respect anything or anyone. And I know the RCMP were up there, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure, and, you know, my power is limited, but I plan to have a conversation with Sergeant Dulac, who's going to be having a conversation with council, and say that this is the kind of stuff that needs to be stopped. Because if it is stopped in its tracks, then others who perhaps are thinking about doing something similar will think twice and maybe not do it. And another thing that bothers me is that I think this summer there was a sense of security a little bit for our senior citizens in this village. And I don't like when something like this happens, it affects our senior citizens in a very negative way. And they, you know, if someone's willing to knock down a fence and do damage to a field, what else are they? I mean, if they're that careless and reckless and disrespectful, what else would they do? And our senior citizens deserve better than that. So I would hope that these people are brought to justice and that this kind of stuff stops, because there's no place for it in our community as far as I'm concerned.
Just a question. If there were witnesses, seriously, someone must have seen something. Hopefully they were able to contact someone, the RCMP or someone knows something. Word of mouth, it's going to get around. But no, I agree. Like the summer had been very quiet and peaceful, and we don't need this reckless behavior. We're trying to better our community. We do not need this.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so that's it for me. Next is Councillor Carmichael.
Yes, I just have a couple of items here. It's the housing, the affordable. I went to a session regarding housing and I got the people's cards, but we're having a hard time. We set up a couple of meetings. They had to be canceled because of scheduling and things happening. But I just want to let you know that I'm still trying to set that up. I'm still trying to meet up with these people, but it's hard to get everybody lined up together to do it. So it's still in the works, basically. The other item is the budget. The fun time of year is coming, the budget. So I just want to know with the clerk treasurer, what is her plan on starting these fun sessions?
Yes, so as you mentioned, it's fun time doing budgets. So I'm already starting some stuff in the background, looking at last year's numbers, looking at increases, getting as much together as I can. Haven't received anything from the province yet. So a lot of the numbers in our budget are coming to us from the province. We have no control over them, or from the CRSC. So we actually have a meeting tomorrow. The CAO and I are going down to the Regional Service Commission. We have a meeting with them regarding their budget. A lot of line items in our budget are pushed down to us from them. So at the moment, I don't have anything to really start with. So like I said, I'm doing some background work, looking at last year numbers and increases and things like that. I would imagine we'll probably have some meetings more towards end of September to give you guys what I have. Generally, the budget is due around mid-November. Last year, and I believe it was maybe because of the by-elections, I think, that was sort of extended. They were late getting some information out to us. So as soon as we start getting the information trickling in from them on things like policing and stuff like that, then I'll be getting something over to you guys. The thing that, I'll need you guys to sort of be working on in the background is thinking about, we don't have this endless supply of money. So we need to think about things like, the tax rates, or, the different services, or, projects, where do we want to allocate the funds we have? So I'd be putting some thought into that you guys can bring forward at the meetings, maybe to sort of help guide how the budget goes as well. But yeah, so budget's probably due towards towards mid-November, and we'll probably start having meetings, I would say, in the next few weeks towards end of September, mid to end of September.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that information.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Just a general comment, you know, the budget is a document that I guess that council is accountable for, but there are a lot of line items on that budget that are pretty non-flexible. And I say it that way, you know, like street lighting or whatever NB Power charges for street lighting, and doing lines, and you know, garbage collection as to what the tipping fees are and things of that nature. And as Angela mentioned, that all comes from, you know, the planning from the Regional Service Commission. But the other side of the coin is that what I would like to see is you know, for lack of a better word, we have an expert in her field who now looks after our budget. And, you know, with that said, you know, when we have our first meeting, I mean, you know, when we have a breakdown on there, you know, we can have it, for example, in black if it's stationary, and in yellow if it's flexible, or red if it's flexible. But I would like to see numbers in there, because, you know, to have a meeting and then we're trying to say, well, you know, let's put this number there, and let's put that number there, because at the end of the day, at the end of that meeting, we can't decide anything until you press the button and see, are we in the black or are we in the red? How much money do we have? You know, that type of thing. So if I can be bold enough to suggest that as we plan our first budget meeting, that I don't know how much work it is for you, Angela, and I'm passing the buck, of course, but I do know that, you know, as I mentioned, it's your field. So with that said, you know, and as I mentioned, you can put them in different colors if you wish, but I would like to see numbers in there so that when we're looking at it, we can say, well, this is where we're at if this were the numbers, so that we're not having a meeting and then say, well, now we got to schedule another meeting to come back and, you know, decide that because we changed this number or that number. But at the end of the day, you know, we need to know, are we plus or minus? Because I agree 100% in the sense that saying, you know, do we take money out of our capital budget to do projects that we wish to do? You know, do we have money in our gas tax fund to do with that project? You know, the other side of the coin is sometimes, you know, if you're going to end up in a deficit, well, we end up in a deficit. You know, we carry that 2 years from now, or if we have in a surplus, we can play with that 2 years from now. Well, we all won't be here 2 years from now. But with that said, all I'm saying is that council cannot make decisions unless they know the bottom line. What impact is that? You know, when we look at those figures, where are we at? And if it's possible, and I don't want you spending hours and days and weeks on trying to pacify my request. What I'm saying is, you know, a number in a box is a whole lot better than council sitting here. So if we had a number, I can say that number's $10,000. And at the end, if we look at it and our budget is over, well, then maybe we need to tweak that from 10,000 to 8,000, you know, not start at 8,000 and then our next meeting, you're telling us, well, I had to tweak that down to 8,000. You know, I mean, I hope I'm clear as to, you know, so, and I don't know if I'm asking too much of you either, you know, but you know, I do know that these meetings can be intense and they can be long, and they can lead to many debates because, you know, the budget is probably the #1 issue that any council deals with. So I'll leave that in your capable hands. At the end of the day, when we have our first meeting, we'll go from there.
So what I can do, one of the things I can do right off the bat is say, you know, the policing line. We have no control over that. I can put that in one color. The amounts that come down to us from the Service Commission, I can color code all those to say, you have no control over this. This is what your budget is on those line items. Where it gets tricky, I mean, you know, you look back and say, oh, okay, this particular tractor maybe needed a new motor last year. I don't know if we needed, you know, what's gonna happen to it next year. So you sort of eyeball the budget, and those are the numbers we can kind of play with a little bit. The things that are helpful, like I said, if we could get going into the first meeting, would be things like, what are you thinking of as far as, you know, staffing? Are we adding any people? You know, is there anything going on like that? You know, are there any cuts that you're making? Are you doing any pay increases? And what kinds of projects you're looking at? What do we have in the capital reserve? Those sorts of things. So if you guys can put some thought into those types of things and bring that forward, I plan on basically having the budget pretty much populated. And then we'll have the discussion of, okay, it's pretty much populated, here's where we are, we're red or black, so now we gotta make some decisions as to whether or not we're going up or down. But some of that stuff, you know, if all of a sudden you guys say, oh, well, hey, we need to add 3 more people to Public Works or something, well, then that, you know, kind of throws it all out of the water too. So I need a bit of guidance. But yes, I can definitely go through and hard code sort of those numbers that we have no control over. So we'll start with that, and then we'll have to kind of play with the rest.
Just 2 things. So, Councillor Carmichael, on the housing issue, I really think that's an issue that you should take, like, lead it. And I know, you know, Mr. Willett, we've tried it, and I think we have to push harder to get a meeting with him. I think he might have been a little offset because, you know, there were some times when we weren't able to meet with him.
I think what's happening is all the housing that's going up in Pararush, Bell Bay and Bathurst right now, they have a lot of money, they have got a lot of money that came in, so I'm assuming that they may be a little bit busy on that also, because that's the reason he couldn't, I think, meet with us the last time, is because he had other commitments.
I think
But I will look into it again.
we need to push him a little bit, I think. And the second thing is for clerk treasurer and for council as well. So the Service Commission does impact through their mandates. 3 years ago, so you know there's shared recreational facilities. And 3 years ago, when they first brought this forward, there was, you know, I had brought it up. I say, we have a shared facility right over here. Minor hockey from Bathurst has used it in the past. Gentlemen's hockey players use it in the past. We have outside tournaments that come in. That should be we don't have a shared, we're the only community that doesn't have a shared recreational facility. And I would like this, and I know that we need to advocate for it at the Service Commission table. But I also think we need our CAO and our clerk treasurer to advocate for it heavily in budget discussions, at least to bring it up and say, when it comes time for shared recreational line item, say, okay, I would also like us to talk about perhaps the Beldoon Arena, because that's a shared recreational facility. So I think we should encourage both Landon and Angela to advocate for it.
If I could just comment on that, I understand where you're coming from. The problem is that there's sort of a certain definition of the criteria to meet to be a shared recreational facility. And basically you have to be offering something that the other communities aren't offering. So for instance, Bell Bay has like this soccer pad or this indoor, I think it's an indoor soccer pad or something. Yeah, we don't have that. So we would have to go there if we wanted to utilize it, the same as the pools and things like that. Unfortunately, all of the other communities have an arena. And, you know, it's great that they still use ours, but if we didn't have one, they could still use their own. So I just don't know if we meet the criteria.
I'm gonna follow up on that, because on the first discussion we had, everyone around that table agreed that, you know, its time was coming. So I'll check and see, because on that day, to the person from the government who is responsible for bringing in shared recreational facilities, It wasn't that it wasn't at the time, it was that it was gonna have to take a backseat to the others. So I'll check and see if that's still the case. Because if it is the case, then we should be advocating for it on both levels, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that feasibility study was done by Sierra Planning and Marketing, and they deemed that Beldoon was not a shared facility. There was a whole list of criteria. There's a whole report published at the Planning Commission, and you can read that report, and it outlines what the criteria was, what the definitions were, why those specific arenas and stuff were chosen or whatever. And I remember at the Planning Commission around the table, the conversation was, well, if Beldoon is a shared facility, then Peteresh was going to demand the same thing, and every other municipality was going to start demanding the same thing, and then everything is a shared facility, and it just doesn't work. So the report is there as to why certain facilities were chosen and why Beldoon wasn't.
Well, then I think that's another discussion for at the ministerial level, because if that's not a shared recreational facility, we'll never have one. Okay, Councillor Guitar McDonald.
Hello. With myself and Councillor Carmichael, we've been up to Campbellton to visit with the RCVA representatives up there. We've also been to our local food bank, and to be completely honest, it needs to be relocated. And we have gone to every avenue possible to see where we can relocate it. And we've hit roadblocks everywhere. So I'm just putting a shout out, if anybody knows of a location for the food bank, that would be lovely, because where it's located is not safe. The clients that use it have to go up and down those stairs, and it's not viable. And where it's located, period, is not a healthy environment anyways. So through many conversations with the RCVA, and I've spoken with different levels of government, and I just can't seem to get a window anywhere to open for us. So I'm putting a call out. If there are residents in the village who could think of a place that we could move the food bank before the winter, that would be wonderful. But I'm just, and the thing is, the location where it is, people don't want to have to travel too far from that location. They're used to having it in that area. If we were to move it down here, it might be a little inconvenient for some. However, if this is our only alternative to move it to Lower Beldoon, we may have to do that unless someone comes up with a good idea. So I'm just putting that out there. Oh, also, too, there is a committee for the food bank, and we do not have a representative from Beldoon on it. So they're looking for a representative from our village who would be interested on the committee for the food bank. They meet, I think, 3 times a year, if I'm not mistaken. If you are interested, please reach out to myself or Landon, and we can inform you on what is required and how we can proceed with that.
Council? Okay, thank you. Administration? 0. Okay, so we'll adjourn.
M 2025-0902-89, that the meeting is adjourned at 8:13.
Seconder.
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Meeting has ended.